Kia ora koutou, no mai haere mai ki Quite Simply Politics. Welcome to another episode. I am joined today by an absolute mana wahine, somebody I'm very excited to talk to about her journey into politics, and that is Chhour from the ACT Party. Kia ora, welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
So we were talking before we jumped into this,
Yes.
and this is your very first podcast, right?
Yes, proper podcast, yep.
So no one's ever put you on a podcast before?
No, I don't think so. Not a podcast, no.
What are you feeling? Like, how are you feeling about doing this today?
I was quite excited about it.
Yeah.
Something new. This is like the journey through politics, really. Every day is different, and I'm doing something new every day, so this is just another part of that.
I also asked you, is there anything in particular that you wanted to talk about? And you said no. And then you said to me, if there's something I can't answer, I'll just say, no, I can't answer it. So we're going to go roll with that, guys. So you may see me have to do lots of pivots today if there are things that...
No, I'm sure there'll be nothing that I wouldn't want to answer.
Okay. So when I was doing my prep, so I was reading a lot about your journey into politics and how you got here. One of the things that struck me is a really, really interesting backstory and why you chose to stand up for Parliament and put yourself in the running. Can you share that with us?
Oh, yeah, sure. I mean, sometimes it feels like what's so special about me and my journey, but I just felt so frustrated with what I was seeing going on in my communities and knowing what it feels like because I went through it myself, dealing with child, youth and family at the time and seeing how children's voices were not being heard or being lost amongst all the noise going on around them. Nobody seemed to want to listen, no matter where they went. And I volunteered for St. John Youth for about 5 years. For about 5 years, I was the 2IC running one of the divisions there. And there was a real diverse group of children there, but you could see the ones who were struggling and you could see the ones that weren't. And you can kind of pick the kids that are bullied at school. You can pick the kids that just don't feel comfortable in their own skin, and you can pick the kids that just aren't happy. And I think because I grew up through that, you can see it a lot more than the average person just walking past, and you take notice more.
Yeah.
And you kind of have this radar. And I was just so frustrated. And the last straw for me was seeing someone I knew who cared for about 3 foster children, had those foster kids just removed, no reasons, no communication. They were just picked up from school one day and she never saw them again. And the communication was just terrible. And she felt like she'd lost her own children.
Right.
And had not even an opportunity to sort of say goodbye. And she wanted to know what that was going to do to those kids.
Right.
But she kind of didn't even have a right to ask that question. And that's when I said, oh, I've had enough.
Yeah.
And so I just happened to have been to a political meeting a couple of weeks beforehand. And I thought, I wonder if this is a way where I can actually help a party get more people into Parliament, to have a bigger voice when it comes to those sorts of issues. And I thought, even if I don't get into Parliament, maybe I can be in the background helping the MPs that did to talk to these issues. Yeah. And I was just lucky enough that I happened to get into Parliament. And I've been fighting for those issues ever since.
Did you expect to get into Parliament?
To be perfectly honest, when I first started campaigning, no.
Yeah.
But I knew I wanted to help the party grow. And I thought we might get 5 or 6, but I was number 7. Yeah. But, I mean, I'm forever grateful for the opportunity I've been given. And hopefully, we can continue this journey with a bigger team next time round. Yeah.
How is it different than what you expected?
I just think it's a very combative environment. It's a very confusing environment too. So, like, you go into Parliament and you're like in battle mode. You're looking at legislation. You're looking to hold this government to account. Yeah. And so you're in this real intense environment. And then you walk out the door and everybody's friendly. Yeah. And I kind of found it really hard in the beginning to how do you separate that what we think you're doing is dumb to actually you might kind of be an okay person in the background. I just don't agree with what you're doing.
Yeah.
And I think some people do that better than others.
Right.
Yeah.
When did you see that most acutely?
I think it's when it becomes really intense in an environment where people just don't want to back down, and sometimes it can get quite personal.
Right.
And I try not to get personal, and if I ever have, I would apologise for it, because I think we should be attacking policy, not people. And sometimes in that place it can get quite personal. To meet your own end goal, and I really struggle with that. That's where I find it the hardest.
Many people will know you for what Calvin Davis said to you, and you're much more than that, right? You know, you bring so much mana and experience and lived experience to the house. I want to talk about that experience quickly. Just touch on it. Because we know that Minister Davis apologised to you and you accepted that and you said that it was genuine. But can you tell me how it felt in that moment in the house when arguably your whakapapa was brought into question?
Yeah, first of all, I thought, did I hear right? You know, like it's like, well, what did he just say? You know, and then I kind of thought, well, no. But it kind of hit a bit harder because it's not actually the first time that this sort of stuff's been said, even in passing by, but comments online and things like that. But this is from a minister that is in charge of an organisation for vulnerable kids. And I've spoken to my story quite a bit about how I've dealt with child, youth and family growing up, and how I don't have that connection with my family. And that felt even more hurtful, that you would attack my identity knowing how much I've struggled with my identity. And I think that's what hurt the most. But then to double down, it was kind of like doubled down and said, oh, well, she might be whakapapa Māori, but she grew up in a Pākehā world. Nobody should have to justify whether they did or didn't. I mean, I could turn around and say, well, no, you're wrong. I actually did have connections with my Māori background. My foster mother was Māori and very involved with her marae and iwi, and might be different whakapapa to mine, but she embraced me like I was one of the family. I was actually even involved in their family kapahaka. We did Cook Island Māori and Samoan growing up. But it felt like, why am I having to justify that? Even having to explain that felt wrong. Because I am who I am. My experiences made me who I am, and I would never change that for the world. And people say to me, well, wouldn't you want to not go through what you went through? And I say, well, no, because that's who I am. That's who created me to be who I am today. And if I hadn't have gone through the good and the bad, I wouldn't be sitting here right now championing to make sure that other kids don't go through that same thing. So I want to make my journey worth something. And when he made those statements, it was kind of trampling on my journey. So I don't, words can really hurt.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so I hope that that was a bit of a wake-up call to all people in that house, that, there's certain things you just don't do to people. And attacking their identity and who they are as a person is a line crossed that shouldn't be.
When we talk about te ao Māori and te ao Pākehā, so the Māori world and the non-Māori world, one of the things that I've experienced, and I know that you've experienced this as well, and as wahine Māori, it's important that we talk about this, is that term plastic Māori.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about your experience with that kupu?
Oh, yeah. Growing up, it's like you were too brown to be white and you were too white to be brown. and you kind of had a foot in both worlds, but you never kind of fit in either. And then because if you didn't speak the language or if you didn't quite pick up something as fast as the others, it was actually Māori themselves that were quite harsh. Like I had a Māori teacher. Actually was one of the worst for me. When I went and asked a question, I was told, I don't know why I bother teaching you. You're just going to be another one of those Māori girls sitting on a benefit with 6 babies to 6 different daddies.
Really?
And that was from another Māori. And I think we have to be very careful that we're not tearing our own people down, because we should have higher aspirations for our young people. They become what they see. And when you tell people that they're dumb, they're stupid, they're not right for their culture, eventually they'll start to believe it. And so we need to change the language with how we're speaking to each other, even within Māoridom, because there is no right way to be a Māori.
Kia ora.
You be you, and whether you speak the language or not, it doesn't matter. It's where your bloodline comes from, it's your heritage, it's your grandparents and your great-grandparents and what they fought for to have a better future for you. And we should be fighting to have a better future for our next generation. And the only way we're going to do that is to become more positive towards each other and not tear each other down.
Yeah, absolutely. Was there a moment where you thought, I'm not going to let that term plastic Māori define you, like define who I am?
Yeah, it took me a very long time to get to a place where I'm comfortable with myself. I mean, I've spoken about dealing with child, youth and family, but there was more to my journey than that. I never actually fit in anywhere. So I didn't fit in at home. I didn't fit in social circles either because of my confidence level growing up. So I was bullied very badly through intermediate and college, to the point where I used to hide in the bathroom and cry in my lunchtime hours because I just felt like there was nowhere where I belonged. And so, we need to be making sure that our next generation feels like they belong, and we need to teach our young ones that how we behave and how we treat each other sticks for such a long time. Even to this day, even a few years ago, you see the people that actually tramped on you and treated you badly, and they walk in a room and you think, do I leave? And it took years to get to the point where I'm like, no, I'm not going anywhere. I am who I am. And if they don't like that, then too bad. And so I think that's really helped me now to kind of let it just slide.
Right.
Because I've learnt that no matter where you go in life, there'll always be someone who's going to try and drag you down. But you just don't let them do that, because the only person that loses is you.
Yeah.
When they walk away, they're not going to remember you.
Yeah.
So why should you remember them? They're not worth it. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I want to go back to something you said, which was that you were bullied a lot growing up, and you said that you hid in the bathroom. What was going through your mind when that was happening?
I think it was just the silence was easier. It was easier to try and hide and just not be noticed. And that was a place where I felt safe. And the only place I felt safe, because even when I went to the education sector and the teachers, it was sticks and stones may break your bones, but words will never hurt you kind of thing.
Right.
They never took it seriously, and they never really understood the depth in which it was affecting me and others within that school too. I wasn't the only one, and they never dealt with it. But I learnt to hide, and I learnt it was easier to go unnoticed and just do my thing than actually try and fit in, because trying to fit in was just too hard. And so I had a young 14-year-old boy come to me at a stand I was at in Tauranga. And we had a little board up, and he goes, "Can I put a sticker on your board?" And I said, "Yep." And he put a sticker on education. And I said to him, "Why have you put a sticker on education?" He says, because school sucks. And I said, oh, why's that? And he says, I want to learn stuff about the real world. I'm a Māori boy, and I want to learn how I'm going to survive when I leave school. But my teachers don't want to know, and they get really angry, and nobody likes me in that place. I said, you want to know a secret? Nobody ever liked me either, but I showed them, and you're going to too. And he walked away with a big smile. I said, you keep asking those questions, and you keep walking with your head held high, because they don't know what they're missing.
Yeah.
You know, and everybody needs that one person to kind of tell you, it doesn't matter what other people think about you. You've got to like you, you know. And it just brought me back to remembering that feeling of nobody likes me.
Yeah.
That doesn't make you a terrible person. That doesn't make you a loser. That doesn't make you a plastic Māori or a spud. It just makes you you. And as long as you like you, that's all that matters.
I really like that. That's really powerful. What would you say to those people who bullied you now?
I actually don't hold any resentment towards them because, I mean, kids can be cruel. Who I do hold resentment to is actually the leaders in that space that didn't hold anybody accountable for that behaviour, because young people will never learn that that's wrong if nobody tells them it's wrong, and they've actually set those kids up for failure. Yeah. Because they're going to go into the real world and realise that kind of behaviour doesn't get you anywhere. And so I kind of feel sorry for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
We'll park that there, you know, and you can move forward.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's a correlation there between your upbringing, where you did feel bullied, and now you're arguably in the legislature, standing up there, having to take it from all sides and experience it to give voices to others? Do you think that sort of have any connection?
Yeah, I just want to be the one and to try and be the voice for those who are silenced like I was.
Yeah.
And to be a leader that doesn't set up the next generation to fail, that will say the hard words that people may not like, but is actually a tough love is a good thing. Young people need to understand what's expected of them. They need to have a line that they know they can't cross. Otherwise, we've got a whole generation that we've failed, like those teachers failed me. And people may not sometimes like what I've got to say, and they don't have to. But the whole point in a democracy is to have a whole lot of different voices at the table, and I'm just one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. What have you experienced with your different voice coming at you through social media? Have you experienced any sort of hate, vitriol, that kind of stuff?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think they use the word keyboard warriors, things that people would wouldn't say to your face, but will say online.
Yeah.
I'm sure people are writing in the moment. They may be frustrated looking at it from their point of view. They've just heard one statement or heard one speech and don't have the whole picture of what I'm trying to achieve. And I've always said to people, email me. I'm willing to ring you up and have a phone call and have a conversation and talk through your concerns. And if we disagree at the end of the day, that's okay too. But to actually just attack somebody and say, oh, all your ancestors would be rolling in their grave with who you are. You know, you're a disappointment to your people. You're a traitor to your race. I mean, some of them probably haven't even opened up one speech that I've made. They just look at the party I'm with and make an assumption. Right. But you know, I've always believed that you can have a prosperous society with a social conscience, and it doesn't have to be one or the other. Yeah. And this party fits in with a bit of both, and I feel like I'm bringing the social conscience to the ACT Party alongside a group of people that have given me the reins to speak to this. And people say, oh, well, you know, if you're in the wrong party, your leader doesn't care about anything you've got to say, you're not going to get anywhere. Well, I say to them, well, if he didn't care about what I'm saying and he didn't agree with what I'm saying, he wouldn't let me say it. or he wouldn't have made me an MP within the party.
Yeah.
So to those people, I just say, take a step back, actually have a listen to what I've got to say, email me, and I'm more than willing to even have that conversation with you about what your concerns are. But to just randomly attack somebody who you don't know and make an assumption. I mean, the worst ones are when you get called a bad mother. I feel sorry for your children. Things like that. I mean,
people call you a bad mother.
Well, they say, I feel sorry for your children, I don't know how your children will cope having a parent like you, back in the day. I haven't had any of those in a very long time. But when you first begin, those are the sorts of things people say.
Yeah. Wow.
Because they just make those assumptions, and people get very tribal when it comes to which party they're going to vote for. And I think sometimes they themselves take it very personally.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, every party that goes in there and every MP that goes in there, and I feel this very strongly, they all are aiming to make a better tomorrow for New Zealanders. We've just got different ways of going about it, and we just disagree with how to do it.
Yeah.
But all of us don't want to see this country burn and everybody to become extinct.
No.
We actually want a better life for our next generation, and we're just putting forward ideas of how to do that. Yeah.
Is there anyone in the house that on paper you would probably fundamentally disagree policy-wise, but you guys have a great relationship that you really like or that you have a good connection with? Is this one of those no answers?
Oh, no, I'm having a think because I don't really see much of the other parties per se. But, I mean, this might seem like a strange one, but I managed to work side by side with an MP that I never thought I would have been able to work side by side with, to champion for something that we both felt very passionate about. It's probably the only thing we've worked side by side with. But that was Jan Logie from the Greens Party.
Yeah.
Now, on every other level, I would probably disagree with almost everything that they have to say. But when it came to our children and the Oranga Tamariki oversight bill, all parties, apart from the Labour Party, actually came together and said, you know what? This is not actually about us. This is about our most vulnerable kids getting the right care and making sure that we've got the correct oversight. And all of us felt that particular law didn't do that. Yeah. And so we put our politics aside and we worked together. So that would be one situation where that has happened.
And what happened when you guys got together and did that?
Well, unfortunately, with majority government, it doesn't matter if the rest of us disagree. It just happens.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you don't try.
Right.
And that doesn't mean you don't keep screaming from the rooftops if you feel like something's not right. And that doesn't mean it can't be fixed later down the track. Yeah.
Can you describe for me how the reality of your day-to-day being an MP is different from what you expected it to be?
Well, I don't think there was any expectations, to be perfectly honest, because I didn't have any idea of what I was going to be walking into, if that makes sense. So I had absolutely nothing to compare it to. I'd never really worked in a corporate environment before in my life. I'd worked a lot of minimum wage jobs. I'd worked a lot of just customer service roles and management roles, but I'd never worked in kind of an office environment. Yeah. And so that was a big change for me, even putting on the suit and the makeup and things like that. That was very different as well, because the last few years before becoming an MP, I actually worked out of my garage, sewing New Zealand made clothing. I contract out to different companies and New Zealand designers and sew their clothes and things like that. So I kind of had to change a little bit about myself there. I was a jeans and t-shirt girl with no makeup. Yeah. But now I know that, there's a different way you have to represent yourself when you walk into an office environment. So that was a change. But it was also walking into an environment where you're part of a group of people scrutinising law. and you're not a lawyer.
Yeah.
And the very first day walking into the select committee process, where you're sitting around a table and you are scrutinising a law and you're listening to people sitting at the table, coming and telling you why they're for or against this particular law, changes they'd like to make. I'm sitting there going, what have I got myself into? You know, am I going to do right by these people?
Yeah.
And so it was very quickly realizing, okay, so what do I need to learn here right now? But then I found we have a team wrapped around us with researchers and people that just want you to succeed, which was a really weird feeling.
Yeah.
Having people that are sitting there wanting you to succeed.
Yeah.
And they're amazing and they just work so hard to help you where you don't understand what's happening, questions that you have. And I think over the last 2.5 years, I can now sit and read a piece of law and actually sort of, I can understand what everything actually means. So I've learned a lot, but I don't actually think that matters. I think when it comes to lawmaking, you can have a dream or an idea of what you want to see happen within a certain space. And it's up to you to write the framework.
Yeah.
And then it's up to the legal experts to put that into law. So you don't actually have to know how to write law.
Yeah.
You just have to have this vision of how you want to see an organisation run. And then you got that team behind you that will make that happen. And so it's a very interesting environment and it's kind of exciting.
Yeah.
Because they will take what you are thinking and they'll put it down on paper and make it a reality.
Yeah.
And I never would have thought 2 years ago that I would have a law written up and ready to go kind of thing, and never thought I'd have a plan of actually in writing of how I see the future direction of our Child Protection Agency. But I've managed to do that in 2.5 years. And I'm really excited that I'll be announcing some of that policy pretty soon. But it's taken that 2.5 years to get all of that on paper, ready to share my vision with others, and that's actually quite exciting.
You don't want to announce any on the
Oh,
one?
no, can't do that. There's your no answer.
Yeah, cool. Shout out to all the people working behind the scenes as well.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah, that's really cool. What's been the time where somebody's helped you or something and you just thought, wow, couldn't have done that without them?
Well, you know, I just found it so amazing. Like, I have ideas.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I forget them, because I'm quite scatterbrained sometimes, I like to write things down, or if I've got no paper, I'll just put it down in a message. And I sent it one night, and I didn't even think about it, but I pushed the send button by accident, and I get this message back, and I said to them, "Dude, you're not working. They can wait. I'm very sorry, you know." And they're like, "Oh, no, we can do that for you." And I was like, "No, you know." And I realized how committed they are to actually making sure that everything runs the right way. And if it wasn't for them, we wouldn't be the strong team we are. So I call it our ACT family, and that doesn't just include the MPs, it includes the whole team. We call them the A-team.
The A-team.
Yeah, the A-team, and then you got the kids table with the younger ones, and they're actually the kids table. But that they actually bring something that is quite special, and they see the world in such a way that I feel if we didn't have them there, we wouldn't be the team we are right now.
They are definitely really good at responding to inquiries. I mean, it took probably one day to get acceptance to come on our podcast.
That's excellent.
So I was just like, oh, okay, great. So that's really...
They're very efficient.
Yeah. What would you say to, especially our young people, our rangatahi, who are thinking about politics and thinking about it as a career?
Yeah, I think, you know, it all looks like you see us on TV and you see us making speeches and you hear us talking on podcasts and things like that. And it might seem glamorous and great, But you have to be prepared that you're not always going to nothing's ever going to go right. Sometimes things won't go your way, and you have to learn to accept the good with the bad. And that can be kind of hard in the beginning, because you can't see why others can't sort of understand where you're coming from. And I think sometimes these days people take that to heart, like they've failed, but it's not a failure. It's just with each journey you learn a little bit more. And I think life skills is the best thing I could say going into politics. I think going to school and getting a good education and setting yourself up, so you have options, and different options. And that's what I've said to my kids. As long as you finish your year 13 and you've got options, and then you can follow your passion and you can follow what you really want, but you've got options to fall back on if that doesn't go the right way. I mean, I'm 40 and just starting. I was 40 when I started my career in politics. So it's never too late. But enjoy being young first.
Yeah.
Enjoy that journey first. Don't try and grow up too fast, because a lot of the things we're asking our young people to do now, and a lot of the conversations I'm having with young people now, I think, geez, why are you worried about that?
Yeah.
Why can't you just be a kid? Why can't you just wake up and look forward to hanging out with your mates, or going to the shops and the mall and things like that? These days, kids are worrying about so many things that I just think they're growing up way too quickly. And yes, when you're 16, you may think you want to get into politics and there's all these issues you want to solve. But you see those issues differently once you've lived it a bit.
Yeah. What is the most recent thing that you've heard from a young person throughout your journeys around the country and meeting different people, where you thought, God, that really shouldn't be on your plate right now?
Oh, there's quite a few. But I would have to say is actually I was at the boat show just last week, and there was a 14-year-old girl, same thing, saying I don't, she looked quite upset about it, and she said, our teachers, we know they don't care anymore. And I said, of course they care. And she goes, no, they've given up on us. And I was actually kind of sad about that, because why are kids actually going, my teacher doesn't want to be here? How are they picking that up? And then you got a young child that I think she might have only been in her second year of college, talking about our teachers don't get paid enough. Our teachers do this. Our teachers do that. Quite frankly, they should just be worried about doing their homework rather than worrying about what their teachers are being paid and how their teachers' workload is. How do they know this? Why are they worrying about it? It shouldn't be their issue.
Is there a politicization of our young people in the education system?
In some areas, I think it's unavoidable. I mean, the kids see the strikes; they know what's happening. But I mean, our kids are seeing a lot more now than I think we saw when we were younger. I mean, there was always rallies or protests that you see young people going to back in the day. But now I think children actually get angry about things, and they're worried more than they were before. So we talk about climate change, and we talk about, we've got to get emissions down, or we're going to have problems in the future. But we've got young people that honestly think that the world's not going to be here when they're in their 50s. And why would our children strive to do so well in life if they don't even think they're going to be around to enjoy it? And I think we have to be very careful with our young people that we don't cause more harm than good with some of the conversations that they're hearing. They think the world's burning around them, and you have to be able to see a brighter future in order to achieve one. And if you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel and you see the world as being gone by the time you're 50, why would you bother?
What can we do to change that, do you think?
I think there has to be a more positive conversations going on about, and I think the schools are starting to do that well. They're involving kids in the conversation around what can we do to help here. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, my daughter, when she was in primary school, was one of the ones that sent a letter to the council and said, well, if you want to save the environment, why don't schools have recycling bins? Things like that, like, and doing it in a more positive way rather than talking about the world is doomed if we don't do anything.
Yeah.
Have a more positive conversation about what can we do better. And I think we're starting to do that better in schools, but for a while there, it was all doom and gloom.
Yeah.
And I think it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it, I guess.
Yeah.
It's just a more positive view on life.
Now,
Yeah.
I have to segue here for a moment. How are you feeling on the podcast? Are you feeling good? How are
Yes.
you, because one of the things we were talking about before we jumped into the studio was the fact that you're not an avid public speaker. It's not really something that you particularly enjoy doing.
No.
And your first time speaking in front of a crowd was when it was in 2020?
Yeah, just before the election.
Just before the election.
When they were announcing all the candidates, yes.
And that was so it was your first time public speaking, and it was to how many people?
Oh, there was a good few hundred in the crowd.
And how did that go? How was that experience?
Oh, I think, it's one of those things where it made it real.
Yeah.
It's kind of, I'm going to have to do this.
Yeah.
So with the knees knocking and the and the hands shaking, I think as long as you're yourself when you're speaking, you can't go wrong. Just be yourself. Don't try and pretend to be somebody you're not, because you always get caught out when you're trying to pretend to be somebody you're not. So I try to, when I am doing the public speaking, is just be me.
Yeah.
And I've found that works for me. If I try to do the big words and sound statesman-like, it doesn't really go down as well.
I got to say, there are some times when I listen to some EP speak, I'm like, I have no idea what you're saying.
Yeah. And there's a whole lot of big words in there, but what did you actually just say? Yeah. And I think that's where politics is hard for a lot of people, because they want to get involved, they want to understand what's happening, but the language is so confusing. And it's not about dumbing it down.
No.
It's about just talking the normal words that everybody uses, because some of the words that I hear, I'm like, I need a dictionary to understand what you just said. So no, I try and just simplify it. Well, I'm not simplifying it, actually, just use my own words, and not feel any lesser than the person sitting next to me. Like, we all came from different backgrounds, and sitting around the table, you got all these parties, and everybody's come from either a different career or a different position in life, and we've all got our little bits to contribute. And like, when I first arrived there, I thought, geez, I left school at like 14. I didn't finish school. Do I really deserve to be here? But then I thought, no, hang on a minute. I've built up a life. I've built up a business. I've run a family home. I've raised all these kids. That adds just as much value to what somebody has to say as a piece of paper saying you finished college or you finished school. Life skills are really important too. And so I really like to send that message out to people. Education is great. It does give you options, and it does make life a lot easier. Life was pretty hard, starting out, working minimum wage jobs, trying to save for things, and just trying to pay the bills every week. That was really tough. But I think it was also good for my children to see, because they watched us go through that journey. They understood the value of money. They understood the hard work it took to get where we are today. And they actually saw that journey too. Whereas some kids don't see that journey. They're born into the nice house, the nice car. They have everything given to them, and they don't actually understand the journey their parents took to get them to that place.
Yeah.
So I think we did things backwards. We did the kids, the house, and then the marriage. Kids, marriage, then house.
Yeah.
And then some people do marriage, house, kids.
Yep.
But I don't think there's any right or wrong way to do that. But I really do think young people do need to understand the journey that the parents took to give them what they're getting, so that they value what they've got. Because I don't think some of our young people actually value what they've got. I used to go through a supermarket and say to the kids, if it takes me more than an hour to earn it, you can't have it.
That's a great way to look at it.
So I earn this much an hour.
Yeah.
So if anything that we want here costs more than an hour, we're not getting it.
Yeah.
Because nothing is worth more than an hour of my time.
Wow.
And it's teaching them the value of your time and of money, and that's not a bad thing. Kids need to be told no. Kids need to be denied things sometimes because they need to know how hard it is to actually get that thing. Yeah.
That's a really confronting way to look at it. I quite like that because it makes the reality of time as something tangible that's valuable that you can't actually get back at the end of the day. It gives it real value, right? Going around the supermarket. You've probably changed all of my supermarket trips now.
That took me 15 minutes, nah.
Because I am quite partial to the old designer ice creams. We'll have to be reconsidering that. One of the things that we always do with all of our guests is that we do this here, the bowl of bravery, which is which is a bowl of questions, and they're all just sort of interesting, creative. Some of them, they're not risque, but they're just, it takes a lot of bravery to go, cool, I'm going to pluck a question out. Now, all of our guests so far have taken questions and answered them. The caveat is that if you don't want to answer it, I will say that's fine.
I'm sure I'll answer it.
But I wanted to say, are you willing to take a question out of the bowl of bravery?
Sure.
Awesome.
Why not?
Okay. So what we'll do is you'll take the question out. They're all in here. We'll take the question out and then I'll get you to read it. Read it out loud so that anyone listening can hear what it is. And then if you can give us an answer. All right. Ka pai.
All right. Yeah, watch my face now.
Like a hawk I'm watching.
Oh, what is your road trip playlist?
Oh, okay. So that's not even a tricky one. All right, I feel like we should redraw. No,
I think we should redraw because that's a very boring one. Because I don't have a road trip playlist. I actually am very boring and listen to News Talk ZB while I'm travelling around.
Oh God, no! You're not allowed to say that. You have to say News Talk ZB and Quite Simply Politics podcast. Okay, redrawing. Okay.
What should I have asked you but didn't?
What should I have asked you but didn't?
Yeah. What should I have asked you?
No, me. What should I have asked you that I didn't?
Mm.
Is there anything that I should have asked you that I didn't?
No, I guess I've really enjoyed our conversations, around it's okay to be different.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes people are too scared to ask those questions, and you were quite good at asking me those questions, and even when you've seen me, I think you've asked me some of the questions that are really important, and I've appreciated that, especially around how I am feeling is not quite fitting in as quite right being a Māori, and I think it's great that you're taking that on because not many people are confident asking that question. And I don't understand why we can't talk about that. And so I think you've asked me some very good questions. So I can't think of anything that you should have asked me.
That's good.
But that conversation is really important, and I'm glad you've brought that up because I think there are many Māori out there that are just striving for a better future
Yeah.
for their young ones and for their grandchildren, and a better future for their kids. And they're not worried about all this politics that's
No,
going on in the
not at
background.
all.
They're not worried about how someone looks at them and goes, "Oh well, you you don't speak the language, so you don't what is it? You might whakapapa Māori, but you're not kaupapa Māori."
Māori. Aye.
Not that I even know what that means, you know.
That's the beauty of kaupapa Māori. It can mean
Yeah,
everything to everyone.
yeah,
And what
you know, and just because you don't have a tea towel and you're walking in the marae kitchen with a tea towel doesn't make you any less Māori than the person that does.
yeah, aye.
And I think there's a lot of urban Māori that don't have the connection to their maraes or to where their parents or grandparents came from. And I think we have to be very careful with the language
Aye.
that we're using, because we might actually be excluding the very people that need help or want help. And a lot of them hear this by Māori for Māori,
Aye.
and they're like, is that me?
Aye.
And they shouldn't be asking that question,
Correct.
because being a Māori is being a Māori.
Aye.
And so I really appreciate that you asked me to come and talk to that, because I'm very passionate about that. And I think it needs to be said over and over again. There is no right way to be a Māori.
Kia ora.
It is who you are as
Kia
a
ora.
person. And you know, I want people to be aspirational. I want people to go out there, and I want them to be able to scream from the rooftops that they're proud to be a Māori. But that doesn't mean that they're not proud to be European or whatever other culture that's mixed in with them, because that's what bonds us and that's what makes us who we are, and we shouldn't have to deny one or the other.
Kia ora.
We can be both.
Mm.
And so I think we're going down the road of being told we have to pick a side
Aye.
is actually harmful and hurtful in a lot of situations, and it can cause great pain not only to the person that's picked a side, but even to the family.
Agreed.
You may not think the same as your family, and it can cause this big divide, and politics like that shouldn't get in between family.
I agree. Totally.
And I can see it happening.
Yeah.
And I mean, just because something's Māori doesn't make it right. There is good and bad in every culture. And we need to be able to, with confidence, call things out for what they are without fear of being told, oh, well, you're just a traitor. And I think if people don't have a better words than just attacking you and calling you a traitor or telling you to cross the bridge to the Tītariti, and they don't have a better argument than that, then actually is what they're saying right?
It's like the kupu racism.
Yeah. So, I
I
mean,
hear that used quite often with complete abandon,
yeah,
and it's actually a very heavy word.
yeah,
It's got a lot of stuff attached
Yeah.
to it. And sometimes I think it can be used too easily.
yes.
Is it
Yes.
racism? Is it ignorance? Is it unaware? Like, it's all of these, can be lots of
It
other
can be all of
things.
the above, but it can also be frustration, to be perfectly honest. It can be frustration, and it can even cause somebody to just give up on that journey of finding who
Yes.
they are and where they belong. I mean, I know for me, the biggest telltale for me, and I'm a little bit ashamed to say this, but when I was being sworn into Parliament, there was the option of doing it in Māori or English, and I chose to do it in English because I didn't want to be that Māori that stuffed it up and people said, oh, what a useless Māori, she can't even do that. And so I chose to do it in English. And either way, the words mean the same thing. And that's what I say in Parliament as well. When it comes to children, love means love in any language. And so it means the same thing. But I would have loved to have tried to give it a go. But I just didn't have that confidence. What if I made this mistake? And then, oh, look at all these people who aren't Māori doing their swearing in Māori. And then this Māori girl does it and she stuffs it up. And so I think we put too much pressure on ourselves sometimes of the importance of pronouncing a word right, rather than being the best person you can possibly be to represent Māoridom well.
Kia ora.
If that makes sense.
It makes complete sense.
Yeah.
I really, really like that. Because some of our nannies are there at the marae looking after everything and they don't speak one word of Māori. And then are we going to say to them that they're less Māori? No, not at all. You know?
Yeah. And each of them would have a different journey. And so when they are looking at things, you have a lot of the older generation looking after their grandchildren. Because either their children need help or the journey's gone wrong somewhere. And some will have that and some won't, but that doesn't make one worth more than the other.
Yeah.
And so I think we need to stop pigeonholing and boxing people into this idea of who they should be, because sometimes that can actually restrain them from actually being the greatest they can be because they're too frightened to try. In case they get shot down.
Absolutely.
And so I promised myself I wasn't going to do that again. So if I get a chance to be sworn in again after this election, I will give the Māori a go.
Kia ora.
And if I don't quite get it right, that's okay too.
Of course.
I'll just give it a go.
Kia ora.
Yeah.
I really love that. Yes. Okay, that's really, really exciting. Well, as we come to a close, is there anything else that you would like to share for our listeners that they may be interested in knowing or you haven't said or that you really want to just put on the record?
Yeah, I think I just want to see a better tomorrow for our young people. So I'm going to stand up and I'm just going to keep standing from the rooftops, shouting it as much as I can. But I mean, if there's anybody out there who does feel like their voice is being silenced, or who does feel like nobody's listening and I just don't know what else to do, I would actually say, and many people don't know this, is that every MP has an email. Every MP has an email, and it is our job to represent you, the public. And if you have got to that stage, I mean, I really think the more people that put pen to paper or even make a phone call and say, these are the issues and these are the problems, the better change we get for New Zealand. So speak up. Come talk to us about what your concerns are. Even email us. I read all my emails and try to get back to people. But, I mean, we can't fix the issues if people don't speak up. And there might be things that you feel are shameful or things like that, but never be too ashamed to use your voice to fix things so that other people don't go through what you went through. And so I'm there to represent, and the only way I can represent is if people actually let me know what's happening. So I encourage anybody listening today, if there is an issue or a problem that you've felt nobody hears you, I'm willing to listen, and my email's always there.
That's incredible. Thank you for sharing that. Also, social media, can they follow you on Instagram? Is that...
Yeah, I've finally got an Instagram. Yeah! I mean, technology, right? So soon I find myself asking my 11-year-old, how do you do this?
I'm sure she loves that.
Yeah, no, she doesn't mind. She's pretty good teacher, actually. But no, so I've got Instagram and I've also got the Facebook. So just Karen Chhour MP on Facebook, and you can see what I'm up to and what I'm doing.
It's been so amazing to have you here. We have talked for 50 minutes now, 50, and it's sort of felt like 5-minute chat.
Yeah.
So I'm so grateful. Thank you for making the effort. And please do, if anyone's listening that needs Karen's assistance, reach out to her. She's put that offer on the table. You know, she's there. She's a representative. There's 120 in Parliament, and you know you got one. You got one at least that's gonna listen to you and answer your email. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Oh, no, thank you for having me.
Kia ora. I hope that you have a beautiful rest of your day, and thank you to all of our listeners, and stay tuned. We've got more podcasts coming up. Thank you so much.